Guys, what's going on? It is Ash here coming at you today in Raid Shadow Legends. Today we're going to list off 10 rare champions that you do not want to use as food. Now, I have made this mistake on, well, several of the champions on this list, and I hope that you guys don't do the same. Now, I'm going to exclude the starting champions, which are all solid. You guys probably know that, so the Kales and the Aethels, etc. are not going to be in there. Also, I'm not going to include Voids, because, you know, Void shards are so hard to come by in this game that usually you guys know if you're pulling a Void, there's a chance that it's good. You probably look it up or at least read the reviews on these champions. So no Bellowers, no Cold Hearts. I'm also not going to include War Maiden and Apothecary because those champions, I hope that a bunch of you guys know, do not use them for food. So hey, maybe I did include them by mentioning them. Anyway, let's get to the list of 10 maybe a little bit more obscure champions that you really don't want to be using as food. So we're going to start out with one of the most obvious no food champions, and that is Executioner if you don't already own a copy of him. Executioner is a Knight Revenant Magic Affinity champion. His kit is actually pretty solid, right? He has a stun on the A1, he has an AoE attack, decreasing the turn meter by 20% on the A2, also has a chance of placing a decreased speed. Now you can ride Executioner out early in mid-game, in dungeons, in campaign. He'll help you a ton with his turn meter manipulation and his decreased speed on his A2. On his A3, he has increased defense and a counterattack on him for 3 turns on a 5-turn cooldown. He's a really solid champion, but the main reason he's on this list isn't just because he's solid, he's a good champion. It's also because he is used in the Relic Keeper fusion. So why do you want Relic Keeper? Because you need to fuse Relic Keeper eventually to go ahead and complete the missions, the quests, I should say. Actually, I take it back. The missions in this game to get your very own Arbiter. So you're going to have an Executioner to spare. That way, eventually, you can fuse Relic Keeper. So you do not want to be using him as food. So let's just get my favorite out of the way with quick here, guys. It's Soulbound Bowyer. She is one of the newer rares in the game, and I think she is fantastic. She's a Barbarian, Spirit Affinity. She is just so solid. A great kit on Soulbound Bowyer. So on an A1, she has an AoE attack. That's great to have on an A1. It also has an additional 25% chance of inflicting a critical hit on all of her skills. So you can build her out with crit damage gauntlets. She's a great champion. On the A2, hits one enemy with an additional 25% and will ignore 75% of the target's defense. That's great for the arena as well. And then on the A3, attacks one enemy, 25% chance again, and then has a 75% chance at fully depleting the target's turn meter. So she's got a little Cold Heart in her. She's got a little, I don't know, big, I should say, ignore defense on her A2, and then the AoE on the A1, and she hits pretty hard too. Soulbound Bowyer, don't feed her, use her. So Frozen Banshee is an Undead Horde Magic Affinity champion, and she got a buff, and she is nasty now in Clan Boss, right? You can get by with her in a couple other dungeons in campaign, but it's really all about Clan Boss with your Frozen Banshee. So if you're having problem dealing a lot of damage to Clan Boss, especially mid-game, she can even be used late-game as part of a poison team. Go ahead and reconsider revisiting Frozen Banshee if you have her laying around in your vault. Certainly don't use her as food. So on the A1, attacks one enemy 2 times. Each hit has a chance of placing the strong version of poison if the target is under poison sensitivity, which is going to come into play on our A3. On our A2, attacks one enemy, fills the turn meter of all allies by 2% for each debuff on the target. We mentioned this before, but on the 3-turn cooldown, it's going to be filling that turn meter by quite a bit, assuming that you do have your debuff slots full on the Clan Boss. That can be up to 20% turn meter boost on all of your allies on that A2, providing you have 10 debuffs on the Clan Boss. And then on the A3, attacks one enemy and places the 25% poison sensitivity debuff for 2 turns. Now you build her, that's on a 3-turn cooldown, right? You build her as part of a bigger poison team. She's going to be landing the poison sensitivity every 3 turns for 2 turns. Then she'll go back to her A1. She'll be landing her own poisons, but the poison sensitivity will be placing more damage on your poisons onto your boss. So onto the Clan Boss in this situation. So Frozen Banshee is definitely worth a spin in the arena, in the Clan Boss as part of your Clan Boss team. Frozen Banshee after buff is really solid. Next up is a champion we've actually never talked about here on the channel. It's Monger. Monger is a skinwalker. He is magic affinity, guys, and he is really solid, especially for Fire Knight, but he's great in all dungeons and in campaign as well. Fire Knight's Castle. Let's go ahead and see why. Well, a 3-hitter on the A1, so attacks one enemy 3 times, great for the Fire Knight shield. On the A2, increase attack, increase crit rate on himself for 2 turns, whatever ability, but it grants an extra turn. Thank you very much. I will take it. So you can you can basically build him up, providing you're going to put your books into him. You can really build him up with an 85% crit rate on him. And then going on to attacks all enemies on the A3, has a 50% chance, 75% chance when booked out of placing the strong version of decreased defense for 2 turns. Granted, on a 4-turn cooldown, cannot be booked any lower, but Monger is really solid for really any dungeon. The strong version of decreased defense on a rare on an AoE, plus having the granted extra turn and a 3-hitter on the A1 makes Monger a champion you definitely do not want to waste and just feed to another champion. Next up is Eris. So Eris is a Force Affinity High Elf champion, and she's another champion who doesn't get a lot of love here on this channel, probably deserves a little bit more. Check it out, guys. She has a really cool kit for a rare, pretty unique for a rare. On the A1, attacks 1 enemy, grants an extra turn if the target is killed. Great for campaign. On the A2, granted not for speed, but still not too bad, right? Removes 1 random debuff from all allies. Then has a 60% chance of placing a 30% increased speed buff on all allies for 2 turns. That can be booked up, and I would advise you book your Eris. That can be booked up to a 100% chance of giving that nice 30% speed increase on all allies for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown, just like Apothecary, only minus the turn meter manipulation. Her passive is really cool too. It's Avenger. Counterattacks the attacker when an ally is attacked. Pretty solid, right? I mean, she has kind of self counterattack built in for all of your allies on her. It's used once per turn though. And then her aura is increase ally speed in dungeons by 16%. So Eris is definitely a great option for you all around. Even her speed aura can be used in dungeons. There's not that many rare champions with speed auras outside of the arena. So Eris definitely belongs on this list. She's a great attack-based champion. Next up is Marked. Marked's a barbarian. She's the half-naked sister of War Maiden. She looks basically the same. Anyway, Marked is pretty cool, guys. She has another great kit for a support on a rare. On the A1, attacks 1 enemy, 30% chance of placing the 30% decreased defense for 1 turn. That can be booked, though, all the way up to, what, 80% chance on the A1 for the decreased defense. Not too bad. On the A2, AoE attack places a 25% decreased accuracy debuff for 2 turns on all the enemies. Nice to have that decreased accuracy on AoE on a rare on a 3-turn cooldown, but her money ability is Totemic Power. Places a block debuffs buff on all allies for 1 turn and a 60% increased defense buff on all allies for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown when booked. That is one of the stronger abilities in the game for a rare champion. Definitely makes Marked noteworthy here. You don't want to be feeding her. She has a defense in faction crypts as well, but Marked is a really solid support champion in the rare category. Next up is Bogwalker. Bogwalker is a Force Affinity Lizard Man known for being great on Clan Boss. If you're struggling on Clan Boss and you pull a Bogwalker, don't feed him. Don't use him as food. Use him, guys. He's pretty solid. On the A1, attacks 1 enemy, has the decrease attack. 50% chance on the decrease attack, especially if you put him in there with a counterattacker and he has kind of a poor man's counterattack in his kit as well. He's going to be landing that decrease attack on the Clan Boss a lot. It's going to help you out, help your team survive longer against Clan Boss. On the combo attack is A2. It's an AoE attack, attacks all enemies. His damage is based on defense and attack, mostly on defense though. That's really good for you. You build him up with a lot of defense and he survives a long time on your Clan Boss composition. Places a 30% increased defense buff on all allies for 2 turns. Again, that's really solid. Granted, it's not the stronger version of increased defense, but to have the decreased attack And the AoE increased defense on all allies on the 2 turns on a 4-turn cooldown when booked. Actually, take that back. It's a 3-turn cooldown. He has one at level 4 and one at level 8. That's actually really, really solid, even though it's the weaker version. And then his passive is, plays a 30% reflect damage buff on all allies for 1 turn when attacked with a critical hit on a 3-turn cooldown. So again, it's a very, 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 very poor man's counterattack. It's not really a counterattack, it's a reflect, but on all allies every 3 turns when hit with a crit. So not too bad for Bogwalker, guys. Ally HP in dungeons by 25% too. He can help you out if you're dying, say, in like Dragon's Lair as well. So Bogwalker, definitely a champion to take note of, especially for clan boss. Are you guys struggling in Fire Knight's Castle? If so, you're not alone. It's probably the most difficult dungeon in the game. At least it's right up there. Ice Golem is kind of challenging as well, especially when you get into kind of speedrun territory. But if you have the right team, these dungeons are not as intimidating as it may seem, especially in the early and the mid game. Runic Warder is one of those champions that can really help you out in Fire Knight. So on the A1, attacks 1 enemy 2 times. We'd love it to be 3, but we'll take 2. On the A2, attacks 1 enemy 2 times again. Each hit has a 30% chance of placing a decreased attack 50% for 2 turns, okay? That can be booked up to 50% on that decreased attack. Damage is based on HP, and I love that. I love champions whose damage is based on defense like Bogwalker or HP like Runic Warder. And then on the A3, his big money ability on a 3-turn cooldown when booked. Plays a 15% reflect damage buff and a 7.5% continuous heal buff on all allies for 2 turns. So again, this is going to be on a 3-turn cooldown, so 2 out of every 3 turns. You build him pretty fast as well with a lot of HP. He's going to survive. He's going to be doing damage based off his HP, but you're going to be taking that shield down of the Fire Knight really, really quickly because of this reflect damage. That damage is not only going to be reflecting onto the Fire Knight, but it's going to be chipping away at his shield, which is really the value in the reflect damage, especially for Fire Knight. So Runic Warder is guy who can definitely help you out on your Fire Knight's Castle team. Speaking of Fire Knight, guys, Coffin Smasher is great in Fire Knight. He's also great in Clan Boss. He's also usable in campaign locations. Coffin Smasher we talked about before here. He's a Magic Affinity Knight Revenant. He attacks 1 enemy 3 times on the A1, perfect for Fire Knight. Each hit has a chance of placing that decreased attack. On the A2, attacks 1 enemy, 50% chance of placing that HP burn debuff for 2 turns. That's really solid. Again, adding that HP burn is going to be incredibly beneficial against your Clan Boss. Having 1 HP burner is well suited to kind of join a well-balanced Clan Boss team. And then decreases the damage inflicted, enemies inflict with AoE attacks by 5%. So Gloom Mist is his big kind of money ability against Clan Boss. It doesn't sound like a lot, but you start to multiply that 5% on every single one of the Clan Boss's AoE attacks. 2 out of his 3 skills are AoEs, and that damage, well, that damage resisted, I guess, or that damage ignored is really going to add up throughout the course of a battle in the amount of, like, you know, millions of damage when all said and done, depending on the level of Clan Boss you're going against. But to have that ability, the decrease the damage enemies inflict with AoE attacks that does apply to Clan Boss on a rare champion is really, really solid. He's good against basically any boss that has strong AoEs, Clan Boss most importantly. Alright guys, I lied. I am going to include one void on the list, and it is Justicar. So Justicar, I have to include him. He's not the best champion in the world, but he is the only void you need, again, for the Relic Keeper fusion, which you're going to need to do eventually if you want your Arbiter. Now, he is a void, so you can actually fuse him as well, so you might want to take note of these champions that you need. They're all farmable in different campaign locations, but really, if you pull a Justicar, you're going to want to keep him, because, again, he's alright, attacks 1 enemy, increases this champion's defense by 3%. On the A2, attacks 1 enemy, 50% chance of placing the provoke debuff on the target for 1 turn, damage based off defense and attack, and his passive is whenever this champion is hit with a critical hit, counterattacks using their default skill and decreases the buff duration on the target by 1 turn. So again, he's not a great champion, he's not the worst champion, but either way, make sure you're holding at least one of these champions. And what I do, guys, is if I pull a champion who I really like, especially if they're a rare, because you know, we tend to use these rares as food, I will lock them right away, okay? And by the way, in the next patch, I received word that we're going to be able to lock champions and unlock them from the tavern, so we don't have to keep toggling back and forth. That's a nice quality of life update, right? But let's just pretend I wanted, okay, you know what, guys? I really want to... I love Soulbound Bowyer so much that I want to lock them all up. Honestly, if I get any champion that is involved in a fusion that I may or may not even go for, just to play it safe, I will lock them immediately. Another strategy that some people do, if you're, you know, maybe a little bit wealthier, not to say that I'm not, I am a dirty pay to win, but look at all these miscreated monsters from the shard pull we had the other day. But what I see some people doing is, let's say, you know what, this is a good way to kind of make one champion stick out. That way you know like who your good gear is on, for example. So let's say I had like 3 steel skulls or something, right? Or a steel skull was really important to me. He's already locked, but just to play things safe, I see some people who will ascend them just to level 1. If they really love a champion, they want to make sure because there's good gear on them, or for whatever reason, they just want to make a note, kind of a marker of some sort on your champion. Go ahead and ascend them to level 1, and that should trigger in your brain, okay, this champion, there's something important, there's something to note about this champion. So guys, that's going to do it for my list. I hope I've given you an idea or two on champions that you should not be using as food, unless you're just, you know, a whale at the game, and or your end game already, you've already progressed far enough where you have duplicates of a lot of these champions. That's totally cool. This is more geared towards players who are still making their way in the mid game, or just looking for end game viable-ish champions in the rare category. So guys, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy the content here, go ahead and subscribe. I just hit 10,000 subscribers, and I will do a Facebook stream actually on Clash with Ash Official to kind of celebrate the 10K subscribers there. So we'll be playing some Raid Shadow Legends with you guys. You guys can, you know, share your favorite champions with me, and we can kind of mess around with my compositions. Who knows, maybe I'll even do some account reviews. So guys, thank you so much for watching, and as always, take care, guys.